Growing up, because my dad's been working at Melodies and Memories, which is a record shop in East Point, Michigan, and he's been working there for nearly 25 years, and my uncle owns the shop. Stemming from that, I've really had a long history with actual records and music. I was interested in music a lot while I was growing up, and and I got some records really early on when I was maybe 3 or 4 years old. Like they had normal classic rock records like Kiss Alive and Paul McCartney Band on the Run, which are of course great records. But my dad got me a junkie turntable to play them on, and of course these were ratty copies of the records, and that really got me introduced into music as a whole. Growing up, I was a huge Beatles fan and the Rolling Stones and the English Invasion kind of stuff. I never really got into the garage rock or independent music that was coming from Detroit. Like when I was growing up, I didn't really know that much about the Stooges or the MC5. Of course, I heard their names, but I wasn't really formally introduced to them until a few years later. But I started playing classical piano, and after realizing that wasn't really going to get me anywhere musically, because I wasn't really interested in pursuing a career with classical piano, I figured I'd be more interested in learning how to play some rock music. So I enrolled in the School of Rock among such contemporary musicians as Craig Adams, and some instructors there, Troy Gregory of the Witches, which is a band now featuring Craig Adams, and Greg Beyer.
In the last couple of years, I was lucky enough to play Rodriguez's first full-length American tour, and when I got back from that, I was releasing my After Dark Amusement Park first album, LP, on my own, and I came across one of my former students, Jarrett Koral, who was starting a record label, and we were kind of talking about it, and I offered up the first single of my second album for After Dark Amusement Park for him to put out, and he was more than happy to put it out, and we put out a single.
A few of the records I put my first release out in 2012, and that's by After Dark Amusement Park, and of course that was Greg's band, and that's really where I was getting started, and those actually all sold out surprisingly. Of course I'm not saying that the music is bad, but I mean I'm saying that since it's a local band, it was more difficult for me to sell 500 copies of a record, since they didn't really play a ton of shows in support of the 7-inch. I put out a record by Bootsy X in actually later that year, and Bootsy X was he was a singer and an artist, and he was in a band called Cold Cock, and he was in Dark Carnival with Niagara and Ron Ashton of the Stooges, which was kind of his claim to fame. But he died of he actually died of cancer. Well, the record came out in October, and he passed on Thanksgiving, so he wasn't really around too long to bask in the success of it. But that record did extremely well. I only have about 30 out of 500 copies left, and that's especially interesting because it kind of explains his staying power in a way, as he wasn't able to perform any shows to promote it. So I was able to sell 480 or so copies of a record just based on his reputation and based on how good the music is, which really changed it for me. Putting out records by touring acts is interesting, and it's actually more successful with the money, but it's also interesting for me since I'm in it more for the music than for the sales. Sure, I'd like to break even on a record, but I'd more so enjoy helping out other musicians who need who want help and put their music on actual media like CD or vinyl. I put out a record by the Illiches, who are a Detroit band. They're sort of a garage band, like Scuzzy Stooges Breakdown. A bit of screaming, but not too much. More so garage stuff. And I sold out all those almost immediately because they were able to play shows to promote it, and that did really well, and they're one of my favorite local bands. I put out a record by the Necros, which is a hardcore punk band from the 80s, Todd Swalla and Barry Hensler, who was in Big Chief, and that record did really well. They have a huge fan base in Michigan and Ohio and and around the whole Midwest area. They're like sort of like Negative Approach, but that release did really well, and that was sort of the breaking point. That got a lot more people interested in the label, and now there's a lot of people buying every release, which is great. Bands from Rooster, I'm putting out a Bands from Rooster record, which is going to be a split 7-inch with Italy Records. Some songs from year 2000 actually that were forgot about for 15 years until I had Jim Diamond dig out the tapes. Then I'm putting out on Record Store Day a 7-inch by the Pizza Underground, which is Macaulay Culkin's pizza-themed Velvet Underground parody band, which sounds like a definite niche market. I made RollingStone.com. I was one of the 17 young music innovators, and that was featured on RollingStone.com. I was on MTV. Gladly, hopefully not soon to be the host of 16 and Pregnant. I was on the Huffington Post, and a lot of other news outlets shared the story with their spin on it, and it was definitely interesting to get all the press. And now that's simmered down, I'm nominated for a Detroit Music Award, which is actually happening tonight, which I may or may not win. Probably not, because I'm still not important enough. But there's going to be a lot of old people there, and I'm excited to see all the old people and collect my award, even if I have to steal one.